morning, ladies and gentlemen. Our perspective is slightly different. We're a racecourse. But my role today is to talk to you not about where the future lies, yes, and 5G and scaring the investors in the room to death. It's to talk about how we have actually begun the journey with Whirlpool. So for us, Royal Ascot 2019 was a big occasion. But what were we aiming for? Excuse the use of this year's marketing campaign, but it refers to what we're looking for, a modern classic. So from our point of view, we have a very traditional pool model. Everybody's talked about it. We're not going to change it. We can't change it because of the governance issues that a lot of the countries have. But we've got to modernize it. It's crucial to us. Globalization is occurring in both the racing and the betting forums. So we, as a product provider, have to do something about it. With the backdrop of social media growth and unification of platforms and the speed of delivery of information, the fan base has changed from regional to global. You saw our investment into world horse racing and actually that social development. And that is just one vision for how things are different now than they will be in the future. But it's actually a bigger thing for someone like Ascot. This is part of Ascot's international circular strategy, which is about the sport. We have to, you'll see at the top of the slide, we've put the promotion of international horsemen as key. Without the horses, without the jockeys that are going to travel, that create all that content, we have no development of the betting pool. Will we go into the same markets? We have to grow the pool. So horsemen are absolutely crucial to us. That delivers us the publicity. You saw the impact of world horse racing. It enables broadcast coverage and media rights. And that obviously opens up. The more we go onto NBC, as Royal Ascot did 2 years ago, down into Australia on Channel 7, that opens up the market for us in terms of the international betting opportunities, which for us as a racecourse leads to opportunities for sponsorship, licensing, and leads to an enhanced reputation and brand globally, which brings us back to the horsemen and the horses at the top of the circle. And that's how our vision and why betting as a product is part of our international circular strategy, because it's a way to engage. So back to the more boring stuff. These guys have talked about ITSP protocols. I thought I'd talk to you about, as the uneducated manner, of actually how the Whirlpool worked. In reality, everybody knows that a pool is hosted and then has a number of other service providers that put into that pool. What we ended up doing when we commingled the market for Whirlpool was we ended up creating 2 hosts. And being absolutely honest about it, this was about the maths. George talked about the fact that the race comes to an end at a particular time, and there's a last-minute flood of cash, that comes into the marketplace. That really crunches the odds calculation. So one of the reasons we created 2 hosts was that was 2 maths engines, which then had an odds calculation service, which was provided by Hong Kong Jockey Club, which created the virtual pool. And the reality was that had to be that way because that maths got more and more complicated, because below that second level of bubbles is another plethora of other service providers that also feed in. So you're talking about chains and chains and chains. And when we have to deliver the odds at the right time for the races off, and the King's Stand is a 50-second race, you have got to actually get your odds to the right place at the right time. So that calculation engine was key for us. You've seen this now about 4 times in today's presentation. This is the size of the opportunity. My friends at UK Tote have given me this and put some numbers on it. It's a huge marketplace. We know that. We understand that. Some of it isn't accessible at the moment, but it will be soon. Let's talk about what actually happened at Royal Ascot 2019. So we ended up with 13 countries and 24 different systems all trying to integrate to create the odds for the racing at Royal Ascot. 5 days, 24 of the 30 races, one of the details we'll talk about in a minute, and only 4 bet types, Because again, the ITSP protocols can't handle more than that. We moved from a market of 18 million to 92 million, a 415% year-on-year rise. And we saw the first ever £1 million win pool on UK flat racing in the Diamond Jubilee on Saturday. Yeah? That's what actually happens when you do some of the very nice future visioning pieces that actually happens. This is what happens on the ground at a track. So let's talk about the data. It was interesting for us. On course, we didn't really see a noticeable difference. We have quite a lot of social race goers at Ascot. We're not Hong Kong. So our customers really weren't looking for the value. But when you start to look at the retail internet, at 28%, where you're moving from 800,000 to 1.4 million, and 28% growth, and the international market, which moved from 7.7 million UK to 23 million UK, 190% increase in turnover, that is truly impressive. But the thing, for us is there was really only a couple of exotics. And the exotic markets is not that big in the UK, but very big in other parts of the world. In the UK, the swinger had been £134,000 in 2018. In 2019, that market was 5.5 million. Okay? Now, we'll be introducing this year the trifecta into that, thanks to working with the protocol we do have, and we expect to see the same again. These are interesting markets that create some really interesting facts for us. That liquidity is absolutely key. And why is it key? Because it helps us make a competitive product. We actually beat SP as a pool product, beat SP 16 times at Royal Ascot on 24 races. That is a huge change. The value that was actually created across the day for the customer actually started to make a real impact. We were putting out competitive odds against the SP bookmakers. Being honest, we all know there is value, yes, once you get above 8 to 1 in most of the pools. But below that, we started to be being competitive when we were down at 3 to 1. And we saw some really interesting pieces which just defined the fact we were dealing with a global market rather than a regional market. In the UK, on Thursday of the Gold Cup, Frankie Dettori won 3 races, and everybody thought he was going for another magnificent 7. So in the UK, the odds really began to shorten and everything began to end. Now, on World Pool, in Asia, Ryan Moore, as we saw earlier, is much more favoured. So we could actually see the odds variance balance out between the regional and the global market, which allowed us to create better value and become a much more competitive product. So for us, it's really interesting to see all those positive numbers and all of that. But one of the reasons I'm up here is to share with you the pain we went through, in terms of that journey. So that was a 4-year journey. I don't have the joys of Paul's 2007 trip. That was a 4-year journey, and the amount of commitment, collaboration that was required between Hong Kong, ourselves, UK Tote Group, and Sportec, and all the other providers from the other 24 systems to try and make that integration work was massive. So when we talk about the protocols, the reality for me as the man on the ground is I had to have a man sat on a phone to Hong Kong, in case there was a steward's inquiry, because the ITSP system doesn't actually provide enough live data to fix that issue. Now, if we had to do that for 13 countries, and the reality is if we hadn't had a steward's inquiry, we hadn't had that immediacy of information, we'd have been putting out the wrong odds. That would have been a serious issue. We've started paying out globally. Now, these things have to be resolved by a new ITSP protocol. The guys have talked about bet types, but the sport needs to understand that the globalization of betting is absolutely key to its future, because it's what's going to fund it. So from our point of view, the unification of rules. At Royal Ascot, we hadn't had more than 24 runners in a couple of races for 5 years, so we were okay to cap those numbers. If we hadn't, Yeah? We'd have had a situation that when the horse is declared, we might have had a race that was in Whirlpool intended to be, but then couldn't be in Whirlpool because we'd had more horses declared. So we had to think about how do we as a sport unify the rules so they fit within some of these systems that are out there, because they are physical limitations. You know, Hong Kong has never needed 24 runners plus, you know, and it was a change to the system to allow that to happen. Bet types, you know, we only managed to merge 24 of the 30 races because fundamentally the rules on 16 runner handicaps and place terms means that actually we couldn't get unification of position. For us, these things have got to be resolved in the future if we're going to create that modern market. And you know, I see it very much as, you know, Paul was in the age of the original brick Vodafone as we all walked around with half a house on the side of our house in 2007. We're at the stage of the flip phone. The question is, how do we actually turn it into the iPhone for the Generation Z? You know, because we've got to get the technology to that place. Other challenges, yeah, again, just being open, is money, you know, takeout rates. Yeah, nobody talks about money in these kind of meetings, I know that. But the reality is, the unification of takeout rates is a challenge because you're asking people to take the gamble between, okay, I've currently got this off my B pool, yeah, and I'm banking on the fact I'm going to get growth out of a global pool. The reality is, it works. That's what Royal Ascot did this year. It was a proof of concept for us. So by the end of 5 days, we had all the systems down and everything was working absolutely solid. It was a bit sweaty when I was sat there 20 minutes before the first race, and there were 20 people in an office in Ascot, and there are 20 people in an office in Hong Kong, and there are 20 people in America, yes, all trying to make sure that all the flows and bits and pieces work. But the technology is now solid and stable. So it is going to happen. Globalization is going to occur, you know, and it has to for us to create a sport for a modern age. But the key for it is collaboration. And you know, if we want to unify, if we want to be competitive with the other elements, it's absolutely what we have to do. We've got to collaborate to get the protocols right, to get the betting rules right, and actually to provide a product that the customer wants and is going to be right for the future. And I doubt I'll be the only person to quote Nelson Mandela this week, being in London. But for me, oh, he says, it's gone. He says, love technology. It always seems impossible until it's done, okay? And that's what we've been working on for the last 4 years in creating the Whirlpool. So I would encourage all those people, you know, and I know the conversations have been had with South Korea and Japan. This is what the customer wants. It's what the customer needs and what we as a sport need to be competitive. So please, you know, listen to the speakers, but I would encourage you to back these products. They are exceedingly good for the sport.